jump into our third set of questions here. This last set is going to kind of move us into the future, into what your organizations will be doing, as well as how individuals in our community can connect with your organizations to make the future happen. Trent, starting with you, I told you we'd get a little bit more to this. So you have laid out a vision for the future for Pangbourne. Tell us more about air service today in connection with that future and what the community can do right now to support movement on that big vision.
That's a great question. So as far as air service and where we are and where we're going, we have air service with Alaska Airlines over to Seattle. A lot of folks have asked, since we completed this runway extension project, how soon will I be able to fly nonstop to Honolulu, LA, wherever it is, and what's it going to take to make those things happen? Because just the runway extension alone, it gives us the opportunity to get the type of service, but to your point about what can folks do, it's using the service that we have now. The more we use the service that we have, the more likely we are to attract some additional service. I meet with the airlines, a variety of airlines, every year. One of the questions that we were always getting asked prior to this runway extension was, well, how long is the runway? Can I get my plane in there? And up until now, the answer had always been, well, probably not. It's only 5,700 feet long. And they would say, well, come back and talk to us when you've got more runway. And so I'll be going back next week to have conversations with at least 3 different airlines next week to talk about service. And we're talking about places where our folks that are here are already traveling to, whether it's they're one stop from Seattle and traveling, or they're driving to Seattle and getting on a plane. But places like the Bay Area, that's one of our #1 destinations. The LA Basin's another one. Vegas and Phoenix are top destinations. And so we go and meet with those airlines and we talk about what would it take to get additional service. Airlines are kind of risk averse. It takes a lot of money to start up service. I can tell you that a one flight a day to San Francisco is probably about a $5,000 each way cost for an airline. You can start doing the math on that and figuring out how much that would cost on an annual basis for them to operate that. And if it's all at their risk, they're more than likely not going to do that in a market of our size. If we can do something to help mitigate that risk with programs that the DOT has in place, such as a revenue guarantee program where we could match some federal dollars to put into a fund and say, all right, well, in this quarter, if your profit's supposed to be X and you don't make it, we'll make up the difference for that. There's programs like that are available, but it will take the community in general to want to buy into that, to have some skin in the game is what the DOT would look for us to get a grant that we could then go to the airline and say, all right, we have a fund available. If you're not making it and being profitable, that we could tap into those funds to make up the difference on a flight like that. So those are the things that we're working on. The service to Portland is another one that we get a lot of questions on, and so that's another one that we're working hard to see about getting that additional service. So those markets right there. Those are the top destinations where folks are already traveling to. We've seen growth over the last couple of years. Our marketing program, we've seen ridership go up pretty steadily over the last 3 years. And so I think we tell a good story to the airlines, or we can share that people are using the service that we have, and if we had additional service, that we think it would be profitable for them.
Excellent. Eric, so right now, Link is engaged in a public outreach process. How can individuals in the community be involved in this? And are there organizations that can connect with you as well to help with some of your plans?
Well, the public engagement effort that we started back in June, it's called Think Link, and basically we kind of took a page out of the PUD's playbook and really wanted to do a deep dive into what the community feels should be the future of public transit. We've been around almost 25 years, and over that time we've seen a lot of growth, and it's kind of time to ask the community, what should public transit be? When we started service in 1991, we were basically a lifeline service. We had a very minimal level of service. It quickly grew to within about 9 months, I think we'd carried our millionth passenger, and that was about 5 years prior to the estimated timeline. So ridership quickly took off. Obviously, we were fare-free, things like that, but we were soon carrying about 1.5 million or more riders a year up until about 1998. So basically what we're looking at now is how do we address the changes we've seen and those that are projected to come in the next 20 to 25 years with better service? How do we stay relevant to the community? What we've heard so far through this process, and we've had about 1,000 comments and suggestions, is in a nutshell, people say you need to be more comprehensive. And what that means is we need to do Sunday service. We need to operate later in the evenings. Currently, we shut down about 7 o'clock. We need to have better Saturday service, perhaps start earlier in the morning. More frequency on some routes. You know, now we have 5 trips a day to Waterville, 3 or 4 to Ardenvor or Malaga, places like that. Perhaps they need more. Fancher Heights, they request service. We get people requesting service up to around the airport, sometimes to the airport itself. So what do we need to do to address the growth that has happened and is going to happen? So the public input section of this, or portion of this process, is about wrapped up. What we're going to do over the next couple months is take all that input and kind of distill it into several different themes and look at what some of these things will cost that people are asking us to do. And then go back out early next spring to give a list of priorities, tell people how we need to spend our money or their money, and if we need to do more, where does that money come from? Partnerships, we currently have a partnership with the college to develop an internship program for battery electric technicians to help us have a better pool of qualified employees to support that technology, and to give the industry at large a better pool, because it's new technology. There isn't a whole lot of people who are qualified to work on that stuff now, at least in this area. So,
Andrew, what else is coming up for Chelan PUD in terms of how these new technologies and developments can impact and improve from all the services that we enjoy, the reliability that we count on, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, the Chelan PUD just completed its 2020 vision, and it's a plan to research, purchase, and put into operation new technologies, new software to help us and the utility become more reliable and also offer more services to our customers. Focusing on customer experience through investments in new hardware and software. So one of them, which may not sound like too exciting, but we're working on a new billing system right now, or customer information system. What that will do, though, is provide options for mobile apps to give customers their account information, power to use it 24/7, as well as make payments and to get questions answered regarding service. You know, something we don't currently have. It's something I think customers expect. You know, they expect it from all their other service providers, and so I think it's really going to be a benefit there. We're also looking at two-way metering, which from the utility provides efficient operations, but getting back to the customers, it also provides customers with benefits such as prepaid services, you know, alerts on their systems, as well as having a portal to be able to monitor your energy usage if you would like to, as well as understanding how that energy is being used over time. Some customers are interested in that, and I think that'll help us with that. And then our broadband network, we're continuing to expand the broadband network under our public power benefit program, as well as just finishing up access to 1 gigabyte of service across the PUD network, which is, from my notes, says it's 40 times faster than the original service. And so those are a few of the things that we're looking forward to working on through 2020 as well as beyond. And
Thank you. So, okay, Randy, this is a little future-oriented, but it's also a question about some of the magic in your organization. You're unique up here because Plug-in is the only entity up here that's not funded with public dollars. You're 100% volunteer-based, yet you've made and built quite a network of charging stations and have delivered significant impact to our region. What's the secret sauce to having an organization like that? How do you fund projects? How are you paying the electricity for the PUD's charging stations? run with that.
Well, I would have to say that it's all about passion and perseverance. Right now, we have 7 members of the Plug-in North Central Washington Committee. We did have 9, but a couple had to drop out for various reasons. And we're looking for a couple more if anybody's interested. But each of us has an area of responsibility that we're very passionate about. So we work hard individually to make that happen. We overcome obstacles with teamwork and networking. We try to be innovative, and we're persistent. We're just completing a charging station in Davenport on Highway 2. It'll be the last link between Wenatchee and Spokane to electrify Highway 2 to Spokane. And we've been working on that for over a year. And we just, if an obstacle comes up, we figure out a way to work around it, through it, over it, somehow, to make it happen. How we get funding is pretty basic. We solicit and receive funds mostly from EV drivers.
Other people with passion.
Yeah, and in the recent past, in the last several years, it's been because this has been kind of a cutting edge thing, that it hasn't been done before, and we want this to happen, so we're going to do something to help it happen. And most of those contributors are from the west side. Many of them are. And they want to come here with their electric car, and they want to recreate and have public charging stations available. So they've put their money where their mouth is, and we use that money as efficiently as we can. We negotiate discounts on equipment with manufacturers. We use local contractors, usually small contractors, to do installation, and we negotiate the least expensive cost that we can. An example of that is that Avista is putting in a charging station throughout their service area, and they decided they wanted to put one in Davenport, and we said, great, you can go ahead and do that. Their contractor came in with a price that was 3 times greater than what we had developed. So Davenport said, well, we'll go with the plug-in option, and so we're doing that. The way it worked with the PUD situation, as Andrew mentioned, we have a member of or a kind of an ad hoc member of the Plug-in North Central Washington Committee is a PUD employee, and he was describing to us the issue that they had with the fact that legally the PUD can't donate electricity, but the cost of collecting and accounting for the electricity that was being used was far greater than the cost of the electricity itself. So one of our members just said, hey, how about if we just say we'll pay for it, and we'll solicit sponsors to do that. And so we made that offer. We said we would pay up to $5,000 for the electricity. Now, you might think that's a lot of money, but it really isn't, because even our busiest charging station only uses about $60 worth of electricity a year. So 5 charging stations, we're talking about maybe $300 a year. No big deal. A couple of our board members said, we will commit personal funds. If you can't find sponsors to do this, we'll pay for it. So that removed that huge roadblock for the PUD. They were able to get less expensive charging units and get this program going. And so that's how that worked out.
Further benefit to the collaboration. It's no longer an issue of we are not able to do this. It becomes how can we do this, and
right.
How can we put.
And one of the things too, I think
together.
that's very important is the Plug-in North Central Washington Committee is under the auspices of the EDD, but we're pretty independent. We just do things. We make things happen because we want to and because we can. So it's full steam ahead,
Which leaves the EDD running to catch up, right, Wendy? Right. Okay, so now it's time to get a little bit of audience participation going. So hopefully we have some questions from you. Jenny's going to come around and grab. Wendy's really close to me here, so I'll grab this one first. Okay, so this appears to be a Pangborn question. Pangborn is great. What role should the many small regional airports play? Firefighting, emergency/hospital, economic development.
Was that a question? That sounded like a statement to me, like the...
What role? Right, she has ideas for
Yeah,
for
you
conversation,
answered
I
it.
think. Yeah.
So,
Would you like to invite Wendy to the panel?
Yeah, please. So the role of a regional airport and in the, as it pertains to the rest of the national airspace system, I mean, from a moving people standpoint, I mean, we definitely get people connected to the rest of the world. It's maybe, right now it's one stop and you can go anywhere. We'd like to make that more nonstop as possible. But I think that there's that economic benefit that the airport can be for all those other reasons that I mentioned, that it's an asset. We don't want to lose the ability to have that asset available to the general public. You're using it indirectly. If it's the car part that you needed, that the manufacturer had to get shipped in to fix your car, you don't know that it came from the airport. Those are the things that happen on a daily basis out there. We've got some great people that have their businesses located out at the airport. There's somebody that's actually doing the flight instruction, aircraft maintenance is happening out there. We mentioned the air ambulance operation that takes place out there. There's a lot of things that could only happen at an airport, and then there's other things that are happening out there that are just because of its location, people want to be near the airport. We've heard that from different people out in the Batterin Business Park. The proximity to the airport is important to them. So the airport in and of itself, like I say, maybe we're not generating all of the revenue, but we're a source for that economic development. Did that answer?
I think it sets a pattern, though. I mean, obviously, this airport was much, much smaller several decades ago. And so their evolution could potentially be a model of evolution for our regional airports.
I just know Trent's an expert in airporting.
Yes.
And a lot of us have small airports and we're wondering how much to invest in them. And I was just wondering if you had any thoughts for smaller.
Sure. So one of the things, the attractions to smaller airports is that they're not as regulated like we are from the security standpoint. Everything changed at a commercial service airport after post 9/11. There's badging requirements and fences and gates, and there's a lot of restrictions that come into play at a commercial service airport, where at a general aviation airport, those restrictions aren't near as difficult to address. And so from a development standpoint, whether it's building hangars out there or trying to attract someone to provide flight instruction, those are the attractions that I think from a general aviation standpoint folks look at. Again, it's the type of services that you have on the airport. Do you have aircraft maintenance? Do you have fuel available? Is there all the amenities that a business aircraft is looking for? And there's a good association, the National Business Aircraft Association, that actually puts some of that information out for smaller airports. These are the things that our clients are looking for when they're coming to maybe possibly relocate in your area. These are the things they want their airport to have. So I can talk to you about that, Wendy. So, yeah.
It's the beginning of an ongoing conversation, I think. Randy, I have one for you. What can you expect to get as far as miles from an electric vehicle before replacing? And I think, does that mean recharging?
Like an internal combustion engine vehicle,
Or the life of the vehicle?
these days, they're pretty reliable. You know, you can go 300,000 miles in a gas car. I would have to say, first of all, we don't know yet.
Which is a great part of the story, right?
But an electric vehicle, provided the battery technology works okay, should be in excess of that. Because, for example, there's so much less to go wrong. An internal combustion engine has about 200 moving parts. An electric motor has one. And
That's counterintuitive. I think
know.
my panic would be, what if something goes wrong?
with the one
It's
thing.
much simpler.
They are much simpler in many aspects. You still have a lot of the same things, so, you know, emergency brake and braking system and all that sort of thing, steering. But in the case of brakes, for example, you have regenerative braking, where the car actually puts energy back into the battery when you're slowing down. So you use your mechanical brakes much less often, and they last much longer, things like that. So, you know, I would definitely expect an electric vehicle to go longer than an internal combustion engine vehicle. I think the reason you would want to replace one on a more regular basis is because the technology advances so much, you want the latest thing. So it's like the latest phone, you know. So.
Yeah. And Eric, this is for you. What is the range of an electric bus, and is the range improving?
The buses we're getting here later this fall, the systems that have had them in place and operated them for a period of time have seen, I believe, in excess of 200 miles per charge. And that's operated at speeds of, 10, 15, 20 miles, 30 miles an hour in the urban environments. And that's stop and start traffic, obviously. So we're confident that we should get 150 to 180 miles for a full charge on ours. The technology, yes, the range has increased a lot in the last 5 or 6 years, I'm assuming. The first generation buses we're operating, the e-buses, those have we call it opportunity charging, where they charge about every other trip they come into Columbia Station. So they go on a 3 or 4 mile loop and charge for about 5 minutes, so it just kind of tops off the battery. But if we didn't top those off every trip, we could probably get 80 or 100 miles per full charge on those. But those batteries, that's a 5-year-old technology. So it's doubled in the last 5 or 6 years.
This last question is for any of you panelists up there. How do you see these changes and the multiple direct and indirect effects impacting, indirect and indirect benefits, impacting those that live in poverty and their transportation challenges?
Well, owning and operating an electric vehicle is a lot less expensive than owning and operating a comparable fossil fuel vehicle. So that would certainly lower the bar at which somebody could have their own personal vehicle.
No barrier to entry, or a lower barrier to entry.
And as far as buses go too, I'm excited to see this electric long-range bus. When it starts going to Chelan and Manson, I'm going to be riding that bus. And I don't ride the bus now very much, but I will more.
Anyone else want to jump in there on that one?
Well, just to tag on to what Randy said, we're not going to be operating buses, electric buses, to and from Chelan or Leavenworth in the near future, just because the technology isn't there. I mean, when I say it's got a 180 mile range, that's at 30 miles an hour. You jump it up to 50 or 60, and that range is going to go way down. And then you're looking at having to put charging infrastructure at both ends of the route. And there's a new system out to charge vehicles. It's an inductive system, which means basically it's a plate in the ground. The bus drives over it, and it's kind of like what they have for cell phones now, where you put your phone on a thing and it charges it real quick. That's about a $500,000 bill to put that inductive charger in. So to do that in Chelan and Leavenworth is just cost prohibitive to us. Plus it impacts the turnaround time of the bus. So for the near future, the buses between Chelan and Wenatchee will be diesel. It's the in-town stuff that's going to be electric, and we're hoping to have our urban fleet fully electrified here in the next couple of years.
Which, reduces the cost of the whole
Sure.
program overall, which
Exactly.
hopefully will help with the expansion and can address that question too. Okay, so we're getting close to wrapping up our program. Any final thoughts from our panelists?
Well, I've got a couple. Sometimes people ask, well, what's the impact of all these electric vehicles on the electrical grid? So there's been a couple studies I thought that were kind of interesting. A number of years ago, the Pacific Northwest Labs did a study, I think it's about 5 or 6 years ago, and they concluded that we could convert 70% of our light-duty cars and trucks to electric with no changes in the electric generation or transmission infrastructure. That's pretty significant. And then just recently, MIT completed a study that said if we converted 90% of our light-duty cars and trucks to electric nationally, we would reduce our climate change and gas emissions by 30% nationally. And that's really huge too. So they offer some hope for the future.
Yep, great points to leave us with. Eric?
Basically, if you want to participate in our project we have going on to kind of tell us what you believe the future of transit should be, We encourage you to do that. You can go to letsthinklink.org. There's an online survey you can take there. And basically, it's just asking you to really look deeply at what kind of asset you want Link Transit to be to our community, you know, in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10, 20, and if not for yourself, for your children, grandchildren, coworkers, employees, things like that. It's a great asset now, but I think with the community's effort behind us, we can make it even better and more relevant to everybody. So we encourage you to, you know, take a few minutes and do that. So.
Trent?
I'm going to tag on to Eric's coattails. We're updating the airport's master plan. Now that we've finished that runway extension project, we are, like we've said, looking into the future. What's the airport going to look like in 20 years? And we've got a public process as well. So if folks that want to get involved or see what we're doing or what we'd like to hear from folks as well, there's an opportunity to do that either through our Facebook page or online on our website. You can reach us and look at what we're doing, the forecast for where we're going, and if there's comments on what you think we should be doing, or this is an opportunity for folks to get involved with that process.
And Andrew, to wrap us up.
I'm just going to tie on a little bit to what Randy said, in that this provides us with the opportunity to get data specifically on what we can use for our system. We're doing a couple of other studies looking at what impacts and benefits could be from electric vehicles on our system. You know, every system's a little bit different, so we want to make sure that we understand that. And so we're working on those. We're also, it's important for us to know, you know, looking at the policy from a larger stand, from the state perspective as well, is that as new carbon policies that could be coming down the line, if you look at, you know, a lot of what's going on in Olympia and those sorts of things, and then how they would like to, how there's there's a push for vehicle electrification. How do we, as a utility that has really low emission resources, none, support that, while at the same time, as we mentioned earlier, we have that sort of dichotomy of, well, if we support this, then it impacts you know, our ratepayers as well because of that increased load. And so our real challenge as we're working on is, okay, how do we work with policymakers to help us bridge that type of gap? And so I think going out of here for us, it's, you know, that's one of the things that we're also looking at, is that it's not just a question within our county, but it's also a much broader question at a state level, and we're also, you know, you know, working on trying to understand how all those interactions take place.
Great information for us today, gentlemen. Can we all give them a round of applause to thank them for their time?